As Rose and Ricky tore through the neighborhood and ventured into the wildfield, the calm suburban world slipped away. Ricky, usually bound by the leash and routine, was in his element, darting through the towering weeds with unbridled energy. But Rose couldn't shake a feeling creeping up her spine. The overgrown plot, once a playful escape, felt different today, as if the air itself carried a secret. Ricky's sudden pause ahead only deepened the unsettling vibe. Something was out there watching them. For more eerie twists like this one, subscribe to The Unusual, where everyday moments lead to the most unexpected mysteries. Will you be brave enough to follow? Are we going to venture outside right now? Rose asked. She was in the process of securing her sandals, though her lively dog was making it difficult. Ricky made circles around her in excitement, jumping up and slobbering over her. The pooch appeared oblivious to the fact that his antics were only postponing the much-anticipated outdoor activity. Despite residing in a detached house with a large garden, Ricky was primarily Rose's domestic companion. She was certain not to leave him outside without reason, and as a result, Ricky often spent his time gloomily by the front entrance, yearning for his family to take him on a stroll. Eventually, Rose managed to secure her footwear. Fastening the leash to Ricky's collar, she opened the front door, with the Labrador making a mad dash outside, with her struggling to keep pace. Having barely allowed the gate to close, Ricky was already tugging her down the road. Rose managed to yell to her daughter to lock the house before chasing after her pet. The two of them zoomed past homes until they were all left behind. They entered a plot of land overgrown with tall weeds. Ricky wasn't perturbed by the thick vegetation. He loved coming here as Rose gave him free rein to explore. His adventures included sprinting across the plot until exhaustion set in, diving into the growth, and reappearing in openings. The various bushes and grass served as entertainment, negating the need for a play ball. Without thinking, Rose unclasped the leash, and Ricky is straight away dashing forward with a gleeful bark. Suddenly, he halts after taking a few strides. He sniffs the air, inhaling deeply before letting out a low growl. Rose draws closer, bewildered at Ricky's reaction, given that her amicable pet rarely growled. No signs of other people or animals were evident in the plot, yet it was possible that something small, like a hedgehog, was concealed within the dense foliage. Rose, to be safe, resecures the leash just as Ricky suddenly takes off, tugging her along. She attempts to call out to him while running, but he remains unstoppable. Thankfully, the pursuit is short-lived. After approximately 200 meters, Ricky abruptly stops. "What's going on with you?" Rose voiced out in exasperation before spotting something stirring. She gazed closely, her breath hitching in shock, when a small pooch emerged from the bushes. It appeared lean and feral, resembling a wild dog. Ricky barked defensively at the newcomer, but Rose promptly yanked him back. "No, Ricky, not acceptable," she admonishes. Ordinarily, the canine wouldn't comply, yet this time around, he relented, attempting to discourage the unknown visitor with a disgruntled expression. However, the tiny creature was visibly having trouble moving. It veered a small distance towards Rose before collapsing to the ground like it had been knocked over. Rose had the urge to tend to the creature, but her hesitation had her rooted in place. She had not forgotten the disturbing description of disease transmission by wildlife given to her by a veterinarian, their conversation laced with ghastly images. These images infiltrated Rose's dreams, turning her nights into gruesome affairs. Consequently, the first action Rosa took was to contact the animal doctor, sharing a distorted explanation of the situation. "Under no circumstances should the creature be touched," advised the doctor. He mentioned calling a colleague in the field of wildlife. He would provide him with Rosa's details and precisely where to locate the jackal pup. In the meantime, Rosa should keep her distance, unsure of whether the pup was ill or cognizant of the proper care for a wild animal. Rosa also needed to keep her dog, Ricky, away from the creature to prevent the risk of infection or possible attack. If possible, providing a box for the creature to preclude it from scampering before expert help arrived was suggested. The caveat was to handle this task with gloves on and to avoid a potential bite, and to be sure to clean the gloves after. Next, Rosa reached out to her daughter, requesting her help to bring a shoebox, an old cloth, winter gloves, and some water. The daughter found the demand peculiar but assured to show up promptly. The trip would take around 20 minutes from their home, not factoring in the difficult search for the requested items, particularly the winter gloves in the oppressively hot summer season, lying stashed away amid boxes in the loft. Rosa stood by patiently, steering Ricky to a further distance to restrain his curiosity about the unfamiliar creature. The dog sat watching the motionless wild pup for several minutes. For an instant, Rosa fretted that they might be running out of time to assist the young creature, but soon breathed a sigh of relief upon noticing the faintly perceptible rhythm of the pup's breathing. Ricky's interest waned momentarily as he turned away to investigate the reach of his leash. Rosa feared that Ricky might end up escaping, but surprisingly, he acted responsibly, not straying too far, nor dragging his master along. The grueling weight under the scorching solar blaze left them drained. Mammoth beads of sweat trickled down Rosa's face, and Ricky's panting grew louder. Rosa's glances fell on the young jackal, sprawled openly with a slightly parted mouth. After a glance around, Rosa spotted a large burdock leaf, which she gently laid on the pup, providing it a tad bit of shade. The situation wasn't ideal, but the woman realized she was fortunate that her keenly interested daughter quickly discovered the essential items they required. She returned speedily within half an hour, precariously clutching a box. Enclosed within it were an aged shawl and a container of water. Rosa then slipped on her mittens, carefully lifted the puppy into the cardboard shelter, and set the water within his reach. However, the young creature didn't respond to the shift in his environment. He stayed as still as he had been before. What an adorable creature. The young girl extended her hand toward the defenseless animal, but Rosa intercepted her. Keep an eye out here, ensure the box remains out of direct sunlight, and ward off anyone or anything that gets too nearby, Rosa instructed. I need to get Ricky back to our house, and then I'll return to relieve you. Please avoid physical contact. The vet highlighted the potential risks tied to it. While heading back home, Rosa received an unexpected call from Roman, who requested she carry out an unusual task to snap photos of this newfound creature from various distances, 1.5 feet, roughly 10 feet, and finally from the farthest corner of their household. Rosa suggested waiting for his physical presence, but Roman was resolute, requesting the pictures to be forwarded to him. Roman had prior experience with animal transportation, although he was not affiliated with any wildlife preservation bodies. To be completely transparent, these associations depended heavily on the support of devoted volunteers and donors who generously contributed towards medicinal needs and the general well-being of vulnerable animals. If the organization in question was state-owned, possibly the response would have been more prompt. Nonetheless, they had to identify someone ready to answer the emergency call and move the creature safely to the Rehabilitation Center. Roman's involvement with the wildlife organization was purely coincidental. He had viewed a video that documented a young deer's rescue after it was hit by a vehicle and had stored their contact information for future reference. A couple of weeks later, he was a first-hand witness to a horrifying event. A man was passing through a small town when he noticed 3 adolescents excessively terrorizing someone concealed in the tall grass. Roman intervened, initially perceiving it was a hostile exchange between the youngsters. But what was happening was marginally worse. The teenagers were brutally tormenting a large, defenseless bird of prey, unable to retaliate. Every endeavor to escape was relentlessly thwarted. "Stop this at once," Roman interjected. "Let the bird go." "Not a chance," sneered one teen. "It almost finished off all our ducklings. If I let it be, it might as well finish off our geese next." That was the moment Roman brokered his very first wildlife-saving deal. He managed to bribe the teens to desist, vowing to relocate the bird far enough away to ensure it wouldn't return to their town. However, the endeavor to seize the large avian creature proved to be rather difficult. The bird was in a state of fear, squirming uncontrollably while trying to keep Roman away. To soothe it, he had to shed his coat, and as he covered the bird with it, it became quiet. He gently moved it into his car before dialing a number he had noted down. That day marked his first encounter with the Animal Rehabilitation Center. He assisted in getting the bird to the vet and got some disheartening news. The bird, a falcon, had both wings and a leg broken, basically reducing it to a non-mobile creature. Experts began to tend to the bird, and Roman made numerous trips to see how it was doing. During one of his visits, he was asked to assist in moving a battered rabbit from a wrecked vehicle. Another time, he was requested to retrieve a baby wolf from a nearby town. Rather unwittingly, the man found himself of immense help to the wildlife rescuers. He observed their operations firsthand and was unable to resist aiding. Through several years of providing such support, Roman started to acquire vast knowledge about wildlife. He could estimate their ages just by looking and delivering the most fundamental help. He always had a box and fabric in his car for the transport of injured animals. He built a bond with the initial falcon he rescued. Unfortunately, its injuries turned out to be quite severe, and it had no hope of returning to the wild. The bird predator stayed in a separate pen at the Rehabilitation Center, where Romans would often come to visit, bringing edible offerings. Observing the falcon's condition made him realize the significance of aiding wild animals. If someone had intervened and saved the bird before, its life could have been different. Currently, the bird was enjoying its freedom in the sky. One day, an unexpected phone call made the man pivot and drive nearly 2 hours to get a cub that had been discovered. On reaching Rosa, he inquired about the foundling. He was taken aback by the woman's refusal to care for the animal. Roman feared that the cub would quickly perish from dehydration due to the heat. It was not the first instance. He had made arrangements to meet Kent, and then he could not reach the rescuer. Plenty of times, the man had to scour the area on his own for the hurt animal. And once, when he found nothing, he asked Rosa to send him pictures immediately. A close shot confirmed the animal's existence, and the other 2 images provided a rough location to look for it. This time, however, the woman did not let him down. She was indeed standing beside the box containing the animal and waving happily. Later, it was revealed that Rosa had not left the cub unattended, even for a moment. As she left to gather nuts, she speedily returned to swap places with her young one. She dutifully ensured the tiny one was always shaded, but was fearful of providing it with water, apprehensive about making contact with it. "It just lies there and won't drink independently," Rosa sorrowfully expressed. "I'm puzzled why I located the water directly at its reach." "Rest easy, I will handle everything," Roman assured, donning his protective gloves. Even with her unwillingness to establish contact with the creature, the woman did everything within her power to create a comfortable environment. It is due to the selfless concern of such individuals that wild animals find hope and can be returned to their natural habitat. Upon approaching the box, Roman let out a surprised gasp. He had been informed of a pup, but no one mentioned its small size. Rosa had misidentified him when she deemed him a chocolate pup. This little one turned out to be a fox cub, a tiny newborn fox cub that had just begun to explore the world with his newly opened eyes. It was a mystery how he found himself isolated near habitation, with no sight of his mother, Fox. If she hadn't appeared by the time Roman arrived at the scene, prospects of her showing up later seemed bleak. "He's not drinking because he hasn't grasped the concept yet," Roman enlightened Rosa. "He's still in his early stages. At this age, they feed exclusively on their mother's milk and yet to learn how to voice discomfort." This explanation pacified Rosa. She left the creature under Roman's supervision and went home without a worry. Roman then moved the baby animal into a larger container to prevent it from jumping out during transit. In the vehicle, he increased the cooling of the air conditioner to the extent that his legs started feeling numb. The tiny one had to be cooled off and hydrated immediately. It was breathing heavily and failed to respond to the changing environments. Roman filled a syringe with water and, ensuring careful contact, he tenderly injected a small amount into its mouth. He was mindful of issues that could arise with young wildlife. It wasn't guaranteed that the little ones would always pull through. If it found itself in an advanced state of dehydration, only intravenous fluids would be able to revive the animal. But Roman was determined to give it his best. He trickled a few more drops of water into the cub's mouth, and instantly a joyful exclamation escaped his lips. The tiny one voluntarily swallowed and craved for more. Roman further nourished the creature with some more water, unable to believe the sight before his eyes. The cub was reviving itself as though touched by hidden forces. Its eyes opened wide in alertness. Its tiny paws pressed against Roman's chest, and a helpless whimper resonated through the atmosphere. Roma had recently picked up a nearly expired creature from the blistering earth, and now the little pup was rallying, even attempting to wriggle away. "You're going to make it," the man murmured satisfactorily. He gently placed the pup in a box and embarked on the lengthy trip to the wildlife recovery facility. Tired from his adventure, the fox pup dozed off almost immediately. Roma reached the facility unharmed and handed the pup over to the handler. It appeared another fox pup was already being cared for by the experts. Ordinarily, foxes nourish their pups with milk for a minimum of 6 weeks, afterward instructing them on hunting and the typical fox diet. While very young, the pups barely leave their den, as they're actively acquiring essential survival tactics from their parents. However, both rescued pups were still infants who ought not to have been wandering around the city alone. The second pup was roughly a week older. The circumstances around his rescue were no less extraordinary. His salvation was attributed to an average house cat. A few years back, Christina discovered her outside a shop. She was approaching the shop steps when she suddenly heard an anguished yelp. A customer exiting the shop lacked attention. As he released the shop's door, a nosy kitten poked its tiny snout into the doorway. When the door swiftly closed, the kitten managed to withdraw its head, but its paw was wedged in the door. The individual who let go of the door didn't even look back at the commotion, seemingly in a rush. But Christina didn't abandon the suffering creature. She swiftly went over and disentangled the hapless creature. The woman felt sorry for the kitten, brought it home, and nursed it until the cat could fully utilize all 4 limbs again. The animal ultimately made Christina's home its own. The cat proved to be exceedingly tender and warm, and to express gratitude for its rescue, it would bring its keeper blossoms during the mild months. It initiated this habit with fallen roses, the shrub of which stood right at the house's entryway, then graduated to wildflowers. The cat would gather fallen or discarded flower buds, sometimes gnawing them off the stem with its teeth. The flowers might have looked less than ideal, but one couldn't help but appreciate the sincere gesture. This year turned out to be remarkably arid. Christina was unable to care for her garden, resulting in a few buds in the yard. But the intelligent cat wasn't disheartened. The cat would venture to a different street in search of foliage, and even beyond, to the fields beyond the adjacent neighborhood. The woman would always be filled with joy at the sight of the gift her cat brought back, and this earned the feline some extra cuddles and treats. Then a day came when Christina didn't get her flowers. Initially, she assumed that the cat had lost track of time. The feline normally greeted her at the front door when she returned from work. However, on this occasion, it was nowhere to be seen at its usual waiting spot. After patiently waiting for over an hour to no avail, Christina went on a mission to find her cherished cat. She had reached the fringe of the city before she heard a familiar meow in response to her calls. Following the sound off the trail, she spotted the striped body of the cat. As she parted the tall grass, she was shocked. The cat was carrying something fluffy in its mouth. Numerous possibilities, from rats to moles, crossed Christina's mind. Yet the creature didn't resemble a rodent. The cat was straining to move. With great difficulty, it was dragging an animal considerably larger than it. Tied up in the tall grass, the creature showed no sign of life. When the cat noticed its owner, it laid the small animal at her feet. It was at this point that Christina spotted the young fox cub. The cub looked lifeless, prompting her to step back uneasily. However, the cat stubbornly brought the creature back to her. Unlike with the flower, Christina was not a regular at the vet's office. It had not even crossed her mind that she could contract a disease from a wild animal. Therefore, she lifted the little creature with bare hands and drew it close to examine it. Through this, she noticed the barely discernible movement of the cub's chest. Christina took the baby fox back home with her. She did attempt to nurse it back to health, but was unable to feed or hydrate it. Fortunately, during that time, a friend rang and advised her to reach out to the Wildlife Protection Organization. Christina located their contact information and requested that the caretakers take the young fox. Fearing the possibility of rabies, she sent the cub along with her cat for a diagnosis. That same evening, the fox cub was moved to a new enclosure. Had Christina not sought professional help, the small creature may not have made it through the night. The cub was so weak that it required intravenous fluids to recover. The veterinarians labored for over a week trying to nurse the fox back to health. However, even the most effective medications only helped minimally. The cub remained listless, barely ate, and showed little interest in its surroundings. When Roman introduced the second cub, something magical unfolded. The creatures rapidly found a mutual understanding. Granted, they didn't carry the odor of a singular clan, but they resembled each other and communicated silently. The young ones fed, frolicked, and rested side by side, their tiny paws entangled. The swift recuperation of both fox babies gave the caregivers a moment to sigh in relief. When the cubs were capable of consuming fresh meat independently, they were transported to a far-off outdoor enclosure, a space forbidden to humans. The caretakers kept an observational distance to abstain from the cubs, growing too fond of humans. Feeding wildlife is an ill-advised act. Creatures that grow familiar with human aid often venture into residential areas, sparking fear among the inhabitants. Fearful humans pose the most significant threat as they resort to ending the animal's life swiftly. A horrific incident occurred a while ago, where travelers were found feeding foxes at that very location. The animals dismissed their instinctual fear of humans and paid a steep price for it. Hunters descended upon the scene, terminated all the animals, severed their tails, and left their lifeless bodies behind. The following day, the same travelers were confronted with the dreadful sight. Veterinarians don't treat pups only to have them become future target practices. The youngsters had a long journey ahead. As summer concluded, they learned to hunt solo. Once they were proficient at fending for themselves, they were brought a significant distance from the human colonies and set free in the open wilderness. Foxes born in nature are not meant to be caged up. Even though the animals couldn't verbalize their gratitude, the caregivers expressed it on their behalf. The moment they yielded the grown foxes to nature was recorded. This footage was then shared with Rosie, Christina, and Roman. Although they weren't all knowledgeable about handling wildlife, they did not abandon them to an assured outcome. They did not turn a blind eye as if the matter was not their obligation. It is merely due to kind-hearted individuals that many, often scarce wild animals stand a chance at survival.